教育强调最大限度地将有特殊需求的学生置于普通教育环境，以实现教育公平。随着“十四五”特殊教育发展提升行为计划的发布，中国各个地区都开始积极推进融合教育，但这一领域仍处于发展的初期。中国社会如何最终实现特殊需求儿童的社会融合目标，成为了教育行业热议的话题。
在儿童教育、非遗教育、STEAM 教育、心理教育、创新教育、融合教育6大分论坛的基础上，本届论坛还将开展无处不在的知识库、可持续发展教育、校友分享会3大独家专题活动。
无处不在的知识库旨在发起一场有关教育的全民探索。通过短视频征集的活动形式，我们希望透过个体的视角和镜头，看到生活中的教育故事，挖掘身边尚未获得热度但值得更多关注的教育现象和教育问题。
在全球气候变化和我国双碳目标的背景下，可持续发展教育将探讨环境保护和教育的潜在协同力。我们希望通过一系列高互动性和低门槛的活动，打开参与者对可持续发展教育的想象，探索如何通过教育赋能可持续发展。
北美顶尖教育学府也汇聚着全球最富热情的教育者们。
校友分享会将邀请到各大教育学院的优秀校友们，分享从业经验和教育行业洞见，
为参会者提供宝贵的交流机会。
教育的多维是教育对象的无限可能，
是教育方法的无限可能，
是教育学科的无限可能，
是教育场域的无限可能，
是教育政策的无限可能，
是教育影响力的无限可能。小到个体的学习与成长，大到社会的发展与变迁。
美东时间4月21日至23日，北京时间4月22日至24日，我们诚挚地邀请您加入我们，
和我们一同成为中国教育的参与者、推广者和见证者。
I'd like to invite you to attend the 14th China Education Symposium coming up on April 21st, 2023. 你好，我是哈佛大学国际事务副教务长欧立德，期待在2023年第14届中国教育论坛见到您，谢谢。
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium.
I want to take this opportunity to wish the China Education Symposium community, both participants and organizers, greet them and wish them the greatest success in this year's symposium.
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium.
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium at Harvard Graduate School of Education. 欢迎参加2023年第14届哈佛中国教育论坛。
多维探索，
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 多维探索，激发教育生命力，
激发教育生命力，
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 激发教育生命力。
我们在第14届哈佛中国教育论坛等你。
哈佛中国教育论坛秉承着启迪、创新、影响的使命，已走过了10余个年头。如今，论坛已发展成为美国顶尖高校中对中国教育影响最大的公益平台。随着新冠疫情的落幕，教育行业的多元发展又到了新的十字路口。线下空间的逐渐复苏和线上技术的广泛开发，让教育充满了无限可能。
今年第14届哈佛中国教育论坛将于美东时间4月21日至23日，北京时间4月22日至24日举行。本届论坛将以多维探索、激发教育生命力为主题，开展6大分论坛和3大独家专题活动。论坛将采用线上下融合的形式，用科技连接全球，共邀海内外教育人士共同参与为期3天的峰会。
我们希望连接中美教育实践者、学者、政策制定者、企业家及各界领袖精英，促进与中国教育相关的深度讨论，探索中国教育的多维实践， 共同展望中国教育的未来，共创后疫情时代教育行业全新而蓬勃的生命力。
教育是带孩子们走进世界的万花筒，生命伊始，文学带孩子探索世界的奥妙。近年来，儿童文学的价值越来越受到教育者们的重视，因为兼具成人和儿童双重读者的特点，儿童文学成为了儿童教育的绝佳媒介。
初入学府，孩子们逐渐接触到各个不同学科的魅力。STEAM 教育是新型教育的一种重要创新形式，结合科学、科技、工程、艺术及数学。STEAM 教育让学科之间得以融合，促进各学科思维和综合能力发展，为学生提供了更全面的学习体验。
非物质文化遗产这一活化石，以其古老的节奏，让初长成的少年们连接历史，着眼当下。以教育为媒，非遗的赋能与反哺，让我们在千淘万漉的历史长河中开启寻根之旅，在数字化高度发展的社会中寻求文化的自信与自我的回归。
伴随着成长，学业和生活压力不可避免地带给了孩子们心理健康方面的挑战。在心理教育本土化的过程中，虽然直接引入西方体系取得了一定的效果，但也存在众多生搬硬套、简单移植的现象。如何关注中国国民独有的心理特征，构建适合国情的创新心理教育体系，成为了迫切需要解决的问题。
新青年一代即将步入社会，成为科技时代的元年见证者。如今，以人工智能为代表的新兴技术正在加速应用到各行各业，其中新科技与艺术的结合，引发了教育行业的诸多变革。科技的不断发展为艺术教育赋能，为其带来更多可能性和前景。艺术也不断为科技提供更多灵感和创新思路，两者相辅相成，为教育创新提出了更多可能。
融合教育强调最大限度地将有特殊需求的学生置于普通教育环境，以实现教育公平。随着“十四五”特殊教育发展提升行为计划的发布，中国各个地区都开始积极推进融合教育，但这一领域仍处于发展的初期。中国社会如何最终实现特殊需求儿童的社会融合目标，成为了教育行业热议的话题。
在儿童教育、非遗教育、STEAM 教育、心理教育、创新教育、融合教育6大分论坛的基础上，本届论坛还将开展无处不在的知识库、可持续发展教育、校友分享会3大独家专题活动。
无处不在的知识库旨在发起一场有关教育的全民探索。通过短视频征集的活动形式，我们希望透过个体的视角和镜头，看到生活中的教育故事，挖掘身边尚未获得热度但值得更多关注的教育现象和教育问题。
在全球气候变化和我国双碳目标的背景下，可持续发展教育将探讨环境保护和教育的潜在协同力。我们希望通过一系列高互动性和低门槛的活动，打开参与者对可持续发展教育的想象，探索如何通过教育赋能可持续发展。
北美顶尖教育学府也汇聚着全球最富热情的教育者们。
校友分享会将邀请到各大教育学院的优秀校友们，分享从业经验和教育行业洞见，
为参会者提供宝贵的交流机会。
教育的多维是教育对象的无限可能，
是教育方法的无限可能，
是教育学科的无限可能，
是教育场域的无限可能，
是教育政策的无限可能，
是教育影响力的无限可能。小到个体的学习与成长，大到社会的发展与变迁。
美东时间4月21日至23日，北京时间4月22日至24日，我们诚挚地邀请您加入我们，
和我们一同成为中国教育的参与者、推广者和见证者。
I'd like to invite you to attend the 14th China Education Symposium coming up on April 21st, 2023. 你好，我是哈佛大学国际事务副教务长欧立德，期待在2023年第14届中国教育论坛见到您，谢谢。
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium.
I want to take this opportunity to wish the China Education Symposium community, both participants and organizers, greet them and wish them the greatest success in this year's symposium.
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium.
Welcome to the 14th China Education Symposium at Harvard Graduate School of Education. 欢迎参加2023年第14届哈佛中国教育论坛。
亲爱的观众朋友们，大家好！欢迎
Dear audience, welcome to the 14th Harvard China Education Forum. Many thanks to the support of Wukong Education. Global climate change is a crisis that we need to face together, and education for sustainable development can be a key component for the global action. This special event focuses on how to empower education ESD. Let's welcome the co-directors of Education for Sustainable Development panel. Guests and audience, welcome to this Harvard China Education Forum, Education for Sustainable Development special session. I am the co-director Liu Shiyu. I am the co-director Dong Ying. Against the backdrop of global climate change and our carbon goals, we focus on how education can empower sustainable development. Today, we have invited professors and scholars from Harvard and Tsinghua, UN experts, and young entrepreneurs to talk about the development of ESD in the future, share their insights and experience. We have also collected rich ESD cases and climate change photography works. We will also share these with you today. Two co-directors graduated from the design school of Harvard University, and they continue to focus the field of sustainable development and innovation. Now, I will introduce the guest speakers. Dr. Zhu Wei, Director of the Center for Global Learning at the School of Social Sciences at Tsinghua University, founder of the Horizon program. Tina Groter, faculty member and principal research scientist at Harvard Graduate School of Education, Cognitive and Learning Scientists. He studies Bay Area related to climate and sustainability.
Grateful to be here.
Dr. Shi Gendong, Executive Director of the UNESCO's Education for Sustainable Development in China. Over the years, he has devoted himself to the research and implementation of ESD projects in China. And Dr. Guan Liao, PhD in Tsinghua University, founder and CEO of No Carbon. He was selected by the UN Development Program for Youth Development Program. Hello, everyone. It is my honor to communicate with you today. Now we will talk about the schedule of today's panel. There are 3 sections in total. For the first hour, 3 guest speakers will share with us their studies and practices. And then we will look at the education cases and photography works. And then we will have a roundtable discussion. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment. We will select some questions for the roundtable discussion. First, let's give the floor to Dr. Zhu Wei from Tsinghua University, and he will talk about how to foster leading talents for sustainable development. Thank you for your invitation. Today, my topic is to awake, motivate, support, and gather sustainable development action leaders.
那我们在这个这些年呢，我们一直在谈一个很宏大的一个话题。
Over the years, we have been talking about a grand topic. We are experiencing changes unseen in centuries. And when we describe the changes, we say that it is the best of times, it is the worst of times. This is a quote from Dickens. And we could see that in this age, this is the most prosperous period for human civilization. And we have rich development results in terms of international trade or sharing of IPO or interconnectivity and how people can communicate with the help of different types of technology. We have become a community of shared future, but we also find that in terms of public security, anti-corruption, and war, we are not doing as well as we would expect, especially in recent years. In some areas, concerning things are happening, including wars. So we start to think, why? There are best things, best possibilities, and possibilities leading to hell in the same time. This is a time of many fractures. And we are at a crossing of humans' development. We find that the world has grown smaller, but the problem has become bigger in terms of politics, economy, society, and culture. In all areas, we are facing with development deficits, including the struggle between altruism and egoism, and overcapacity and insufficient demand in economy, and the polarization of different social groups, which lead to the fracture of the society. And more importantly, in terms of culture, international trust and cooperation is faced with immense challenges, especially during the 3 years of pandemic. We are facing with huge setbacks in terms of international communication and cooperation. We have to talk about the choices we make at this crossing. First, should we travel on the same boat, or should we benefit while other people lose? This is the first choice that we should make. We should together set the basic foundation for human development. Everyone needs to sit at the same table, stick to multilateralism, and face the natural and economic problems that are common for human beings. That is how we can maintain the prosperity of human societies. When dealing with international relationship, should we peacefully coexist or should we stick to the rules of the jungle? When dealing with conflicts, should we sit down and have a good discussion, or should we simply resort to forces? That is also a prominent question that we're facing. And these are two entirely different paths. In terms of development model, should we continue to develop at the expense of nature and society, pursue economic development only and meet people's need only? Or should we choose a better way of development so that we can responsibly consume and produce, so that people's basic needs can be met while human and nature can coexist in a harmonious manner. This is also a critical choice we need to make. In terms of the result of development and how we share the result, should we stick to common prosperity for all human and enjoy the result of civilization of different countries, or shall we only gather the results in certain countries and let the gaps between different classes and the regions grow larger? At the society level, this is also a critical issue we need to address. The photo on the right-hand side is quite striking. These are two pictures put together. On the one end, it is the glorious life, and on the other side, that is impoverished life. They couldn't even meet their basic education or survival needs. We hope that as a group, humans can enjoy equal possibilities and opportunities. So faced with changes unseen in a century, at this critical crossing, how can we plan for our future life, and which direction shall humans take for their future? In 2015, UN has provided us with a roadmap, and I believe that you all know about this. That is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 items. We can have a review of the 17 items on the next slide. The agenda involves mainly three aspects: the social level, economic level, and ecological level. The ultimate target is to realize the targets in all three levels and make some systematic adjustments so that everyone can live on a healthy earth peacefully, with dignity and equally. In the whole system of UN SDG, the three dimensions of nature, economy, and society cannot be separated from one another. It should be a systematic target, and we value every link equally before we can truly realize our target. In 2020, after the pandemic started to spread, we were faced with a big problem. From 2015 to 2020, we have made many efforts for the SDGs and we have made many progress. But after the pandemic, the process was reversed. For the UN or many experts and scholars, there are many negative thoughts and pessimistic thoughts. We are faced with many dilemmas, including the following aspects. I call them the dark forest dilemma, GATT dilemma. The inability of cooperation and the problem that we can only go through difficulties together but cannot share prosperity together. The Black Forest dilemma comes from Liu Cixin's novel, The Santi. It was used to describe the relationship between Earth and other planets, but it also applies to human society. GATT refers to the tariff agreement, but now we jokingly say that it is talking without taking actions. The third one literally means that one monk can get water, two monks can get water, but three monks cannot, because if there are more people, they might interfere with each other's efforts. And the fourth dilemma is that we can go through difficulties together, but we cannot enjoy prosperity together. And who will be the people who solve these problems? I believe that just as SDG 2030 proposed, youth are the hope of future and they are the creator of the future. Only if youth participate in sustainable development and become a leading power can we truly realize SDGs. Since 2015, UN started the Sustainable Development Young Leaders Project, and every 2 years, globally, outstanding young people will be chosen as examples. In today's sustainable development, we believe that we should give young people more opportunities to practice so that they can have stronger awareness and abilities of sustainable development. At present, young people's participation in sustainable development actions are faced with some difficulties. First, they don't have enough awareness of participation. They do not know why they should contribute to the course of human. And the second, they do not have enough motive for participation. Some simply want to deal with their own things. They want a good job and education. They do not want to contribute to a greater cause. And the third, some of the young people lack the ability because it is not involved in the school curriculums, and we don't have enough empowering projects so that young people can understand international rules and sustainable development problems. And lastly, young people lack opportunities in previous sustainable development activities. They are excluded from the mainstream system. That is why the 2030 Youth Project proposed that we need to empower young people to participate in sustainable development activities. We believe that in this process, how can we motivate young people to participate in sustainable development? There are four major methods. First, we need to take a series of measures to motivate the autonomous awareness of young people so that they can actively participate in global governance. We need to make them realize that this is for the better development of themselves and the whole world. And second, we need to encourage young people to choose studying these problems as their careers, and then they would have more motive to devote into the course of sustainable development. And third, we need to create more opportunities and platforms so that they can participate more in the practices of sustainable development. Only talks or paperwork for them is not enough. They have to go into the mainstream agenda of sustainable development. And lastly, we need cohesion. We hope that we can create a network for teenagers to better take actions, stick together, and go into the future. So how do we foster leaders of sustainable development actions? We realize that promoting the awareness and improving abilities are very important, but more importantly, we need young leaders. They are able to help and lead young people to move forward faster and more effectively. In international organizations and the UN, many qualities or indicators of such leaders have been proposed. We have also constructed a model and proposed several dimensions. For example, in personal dimension, we need morality, responsibility, awareness, and confidence. We need to pay more attention to global issues and use better means of communication. We need to stay open and respect other civilizations, and we need to improve communication and collaboration. These are all skills and awarenesses that we should pay more attention to. During this process, there are some models that we should take. First, we need to invite experts and scholars to provide guidance. Only theoretical teaching is not enough. We need to show them. And the second, we need to help young people communicate with governmental leaders, international educations, and industrial organizations so that they can study policies together. Then they get to know how the top organizations are doing judgments and making policies in this field. And third, they need immersive social practice at the front line. And they need to focus on specific themes of SDGs and find problems in local communities. They can solve specific problems with their specialties and experience and provide solutions. And lastly, I hope that we can help them to go into international organizations, foundations, and communicate with young people from other areas. They could learn from each other and create a larger network. Through practice, we constantly empower young people and young leaders to become creators and leaders of sustainable ways of life. And these are some cases. This case was done in Guizhou province, and the effort was to reduce natural disasters in this area. This is our survey in Switzerland, and we have brought in nature education in terms of eco diversity. We are helping young people to establish centers for nature education or sustainable development education so that more people can understand nature and promote the development of eco diversity. Each year, we will hold an SDG camp or SDG marathon. We cooperate from conservation zones. And we can connect the biodiversity of the conservation zones with urban citizens. For example, we have projects including taking the conservation zone home, and you can even take some of the plants home. This is a game we have developed. Through the game, we connect the virtual world and the reality organically. We have built the game of how to save the world. You need to accumulate experience through environmental protection and waste sorting. Through your actions, you can get more credits and input it into your game. This is the project where we combine art with sustainable development. It helps with gender equality, traditional culture communication, and poverty elimination. And we have also some projects about carbon reduction. Due to time constraints, I wouldn't go into details. We have also made some sustainable development action report for businesses, and we have set a comprehensive system. We have also established evaluation indicators and the system. We could provide a smart evaluation planning and prediction for some projects.
我们实际上在这个过程当中凝聚了很多这样的青年的力量，就是我们在人与生物学
Many young people have joined our forces in the International Youth Forum and in the marathon. We have get great results. And this is a very effective model. Through awakening, motivating, and supporting, we can effectively put sustainable education into practice. That is all for my presentation today, and this is our belief. We believe that young people together should bring light not only to ourselves, but also to this world. Thank you so much for your interesting presentation. Now let's give the floor to Professor Grotzer, and she will talk to us about educating for sustainable development. What will it take?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you today. I am honored to have so many educators with us because you are the ones who are doing the heavy lifting in support of the next generation and a sustainable planet. I've been working with a focus on complexity in the environment for about 4 decades now, and today I'm going to offer to you some high-level summarizing points. There are many research and educational resources to support the work that I'm talking about, so I encourage you to follow up for more information if you are interested. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. I am going to share 3 broad shifts in turn that I think are necessary for educating for sustainability. These include educating for global collectivity, educating for complexity, and educating for Earth X design. Next. What do I mean by educating for global collectivity? What does it mean to help the next generation to see themselves as global citizens or to think like an Earthling? We spend a lot of time focused on what divides us, but ultimately we are all in the same boat. Next. Perhaps the best way to present the concept is through the words of someone who researches extraterrestrial intelligence, the potential for life that does not share our planet. Jill Tarter is a well-known astronomer and emeritus scientist and professor at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And I had the opportunity to hear her speak a few years ago at a conference, and her words really stayed with me. She said, if you sit and listen to me talk, or anyone talk or think about SETI, you've got to realize that it is putting up a mirror to everyone on the planet. And the message is, you are all the same when compared to something else out there. And I think that this is the perspective, the cosmic perspective that we need globally in order to attack the challenges that she had spoken about earlier with respect to water security and food security and energy. We need to think and act as one species. We are Earthlings. She quoted Sharp, and he says, on a finite world, that's us, a cosmic perspective isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. So you all have a homework assignment. When you get back to your social media, go into your profiles and change the first thing that you say about yourself to the fact that you are an Earthling, and then act like it. So these are very important words. How do we go about helping learners to see their global citizenship and to put it first? Next slide. A big issue with climate change is that it often impacts the most vulnerable, and those who are impacted are not the primary contributors to greenhouse gases. Further, we often cannot see those people or hear their voices. So we introduce a game to young people called Moral Musical Chairs. The game is from many years ago, and it comes out of the work of the great moral development philosopher Lawrence Kohlberg, who was my advisor here at Harvard. We've made some modifications to the game but it still holds deep relevance for today. So how does it work? Next slide. So we ask learners to focus on an environmental issue, and then in some ways that are similar to the children's game, they consider what perspectives might relate to the situation with support from their teacher in helping them to consider what voices should be at the table. They gather information about each, being mindful of the need to set aside their own lenses as much as possible and supported by the teachers in this preparation. And then they play moral musical chairs with one chair per role to consider the perspectives, imagining that they could be anyone in this scenario. So like the children's game, music plays and they walk around, and when it stops, they all sit down. The teacher lightly facilitates as needed to help to deepen the conversation through questions and to explore different perspectives and conflicting needs. For those of you who know the work of philosopher John Rawls, it adopts this perspective and invokes what's called the veil of ignorance, meaning that if you could be anyone in the given situation, what would you have to decide is the most moral thing to do? Next slide. Thank you. A set of key essential questions guide the conversation. We ask learners to engage in realizing their own lens through contrast to others. What perspectives do I hold? Recognizing dominant and silenced voices. What voices am I not hearing? Understanding other lenses. What perspectives might other voices bring and what influences them? And then adopting other lenses to view particular situations. How do I see it differently through these different lenses? Finally, we ask them to step out of their own stance. What might I decide to do if I didn't know which role in the complex situation I will inhabit? Next slide. For those of you who would like more information, we have a number of research papers that we've published about thinking like an earthling and reasoning about our distributed global collectivity. Links are on our Cognition in a Complex World site, and you will also find a curriculum module focused on distributed causality and our collectivity, and it's designed for secondary level learners. Next slide. The next big shift that we need involves educating for complexity. This is an area of research that I've studied for many years and have identified some of the puzzles and some of the promise of educating young people about complexity. This work has looked at how human minds work and what makes it so hard for them to reason about complexity. This makes it different from much of the work on systems thinking, because some of those forms of thinking give students ways to think about systems, but we've actually looked at what the challenges are from a cognitive science and neuroscience perspective. Next slide. So the biggest challenge is that human minds are not well adapted for noticing, attending, or perceiving complexity. And in many respects, they're also not very motivated to do so. We tend to be very efficient in our everyday lives. Next slide. The research shows that human beings tend to use a set of simplifying ideas or biases. So in this slide, the first framing is how we simplify versus the more complex framing that often represents the form of complexity in the world. So in turn, when we think about linear versus nonlinear, we assume that causes and effects work in ways that are linear, and that when they're often nonlinear and they involve cycles, mutual causation, etc. We also assume that causes have direct effects, and we tend to miss indirect extended causes. We look at unidirectional causality, and we miss bidirectional, mutual, and relational forms of causality. We expect causes to unfurl in a sequential pattern, as opposed to events happening all at once. This is especially problematic because then we don't have time to address the problems as they simultaneously unfurl. This is, what happens with a triggering effect in climate change. So it's really quite challenging when all of a sudden you have many impacts to deal with at once. We tend to, we pay attention to what we can see, but not what we can't see. We attend to causes and effects that are close by, missing what's far away. We also tend to take note of something when it happens, but we ignore processes and steady states. So things in equilibrium or disequilibrium. We tend to notice what just happened, but we don't pay attention to what will happen in the long term or what has happened in the distant past. And we notice things that happen reliably, but not probabilistically. So if they happen only some of the time or they have trigger points, they are easy for human beings to ignore, unfortunately. We pay attention to active or intentional agents. We're less likely to think about unintended outcomes. So, our collective action contributes to climate change, but we don't think about it because we don't intend for it to happen. And centralized versus decentralized causality. We attend to the actions of central figures like the government, and we tend to miss our distributed, decentralized roles. Next slide. When we think about causal patterns, we tend to notice the first two, linear and domino. And those are the ones that we stop attending to. We sort of see them and then we stop attending, so we don't notice when something is cyclic or spiraling or relational or mutual. Next slide. So when it comes to the environment, this means we struggle to think about all of the kinds of patterns on this slide. I will talk about a few of them briefly in the next few slides. So next slide. Distributed causality, we think about our own actions, but not what happens when our many choices add up to an even more challenging when they not only add up, but they interact with each other. So we attend to what others are doing, and then we escalate our behaviors. So here on this slide, you see traffic jams, you see other creatures that engage in distributed causality and become superorganisms. But often it's very hard for us to pay attention to because the outcomes are not ones that we intend. Next slide. We also attend to what we call action at an attentional distance. This refers to instances where there's spatially discontinuous causes and effects. They reside in different attentional frames. So when we get up in the morning and we get in our car to go somewhere, we don't think about polar bears and we don't think about the Marshall Islands or people far away who are experiencing the outcomes of climate change already. We all are, but some to a much greater extent. Next slide. It's also very hard to attend to what we can't see. So mechanisms that are non-obvious often escape our attention. We don't allow for causeless effects, but until we can see effects, we don't look for causes. And if you think about the causes of climate change, they're very different than air pollution. We look out and we can see air pollution. We don't see carbon in the atmosphere. So that makes it very hard to keep it in mind. Next slide. So all of these patterns can be learned, and young people can be educated to think about complex forms of causality. This slide contains links to websites and resources for materials for educators to help them teach these concepts. This website is also, in addition to the one on the earlier slide. So there's also this causal patterns in science website. So we have both the Cognition in a Complex World website and the Causal Patterns in Science website. Next slide. Here is a list of publications related to our work on complexity. These are also available on the Cognition in a Complex World website. Next slide. Finally, we need to make a shift towards Earth X design. When we think about design thinking, most people imagine human-centered design as what represents good design. We see an emphasis on users and development with the user in mind. And we see words such as experience and empathy as central terms. Human-centered design can be incredibly impactful and important to humanity. And it really is pervasive in terms of how people think about design. They think about it as the gold standard. It's, we start thinking about what do humans need? Well, that seems okay, doesn't it? Except for this. Every single aspect of, last slide, go back one. Oh, it's okay. Every single aspect of our lives, our history, and our possible futures are tied to the planet that we live on. Every aspect of our well-being and our happiness depends upon that small blue planet. The habitability of our planet is it's the result of an amazing confluence of events. We've been living in that confluence in past decades, just enough carbon to keep us warm enough, but not too much so that we don't dangerously overheat. So the question about whether human-centered design lenses are the best way to innovate when it comes to issues that we currently face and the next generation faces, that's a critical question. All of our human endeavors, including human-centered design, now and into the future, face an existential threat unless we attend equally to Earth-centered design and humans as members of the planet. Now the next slide. So why do we need EarthX design? Well, innovation and design in all aspects of life will be essential for continuing to meet the challenges of a warming planet. We have significant challenges in front of us. While there are approaches to innovation and design, much of it is human-centric and not well suited to issues of sustainability and the climate crisis. Human experience depends upon Earth systems and dynamics, and the climate crisis requires that we have new high-leverage forms of broad innovation in terms of non-local approaches and autonomous adaptation in terms of local design. And the existing research on creative thinking can be leveraged forward to inform Earth-centric approaches to design. It's not necessarily the case that UX and EarthX design need to be in competition. So you can shift the next slide. There we go. So we believe that the following shifts are needed. A shift from putting humans at the center to putting Earth at the center. A sense that, from decontextualized, broadly marketable solutions to ones that are deeply in relationship with nature. We think we need to move from non-cultural narratives to ones that are embedded in local wisdom and culture, ones that are function-oriented to more systems-embedded design solutions, and ones that focus on an immediate need in terms of the temporal and spatial scale to ones that have extended temporal and spatial scales, ones that have longer time horizons and global implications. So, next slide. How can we make designs that are more Earth resonant? What are ways that we already have a lot of designs around us, so how can we adjust some of those designs to make them work better for us? Next slide. So we ask a series of questions when we're analyzing whether a design is Earth resonant. We ask, does it include consideration for the planet, for the non-human inhabitants of the planet, or only people? Can it be sustained over time, or does it simply introduce new problems? Are the implicit assumptions revealed, analyzed, and reconsidered? Sometimes we turn problems inside out to come up with more Earth-resonant approaches. It needs to think about unanticipated effects and trace them out and consider them. It also needs to address sensibility, ability, and inclination. We need to notice opportunities to think and act differently. We need to know how, and we need to be motivated to follow through. Is it addressing environmental issues, injustice issues, and health issues? Are there paths to acceptance? Will people take these solutions and use them? It doesn't mean just because it's Earth resonant that it doesn't need to be appealing to people. They, if we want them to adopt them, they have to be both acceptable and earth resonant. And then can you change them up in local context to make them really work? And do they benefit from local knowledge? The other question we ask is it a centralized solution or a decentralized solution? Sometimes decentralized works much better because it's more resilient. Next slide. So the three main shifts here, educating for global collectivity, educating for complexity, and educating for Earth X design, I think are really important. And the question for humanity is, can we do it? And can educators help us to get there? Last slide. So this presentation reflects work in progress at the Next Level Lab. We just posted a paper on Earth X design yesterday for Earth Day, which I guess was 2 days ago for you, perhaps. And it's available on this site. We're grateful to the National Science Foundation for their support of our work and to Accenture Corporate Citizenship for their support of the Next Level Lab. Thank you for the opportunity to present this work to you today.
好的，感谢 Grosser 教授精彩的分享。下面我们邀请最后一位分享嘉宾。
Thank you, Ms. Grosser, for your interesting presentation. Now let's give the floor to the last guest speaker, Dr. Shi from UNESCO. He will talk about equal civilization and education for sustainable development. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your invitation. I am from UNESCO China's Sustainable Development Education Project. It was established in 2022, and it is in charge of global coordination and the promotion of projects of education for sustainable development. Together, we experience the process of development for ESD in China, and our team has participated in the first, the second, and the third ESD World Conference of UNESCO. Today, I will give you a presentation about equal civilization and education for sustainable development. And I'd like to use this opportunity to share some of my ideas about global and the Chinese ESD in terms of new trends and new development. So these are the three topics. First, theoretical thinkings of equal civilization and ESD. Now, UNESCO is promoting ESD, and I have added equal civilization education. So together it is equal civilization and sustainable development education. The second question, the two trends of competing for supremacy and leading the way. I would add some cases of ESD. And third, I will talk about the outlook. For equal civilization and sustainable development education, first, we should look at the relevance between the concept of equal civilization and sustainable development. From a primitive civilization to agricultural civilization to industrial civilization, the link is development. However, from industrial civilization to equal civilization, it has to be changed from development into sustainable development. This is the first thing that we should consider.
如果是这样的话，那我们就可以来考虑教育跟可持续发展。
Next, we should consider the relationship between education and sustainable development and equal civilization. Education needs to facilitate the process of sustainable development. And education needs to serve the goal of eco-civilization and eco-society. From this sense, we can say that it is education for ecological civilization and sustainable development, or EECSD in short. So these are the concepts we need to keep in mind. The Chinese government and the education department made the following arrangements. China will focus on education for eco-civilization and integrate ESD into the National Plan of Education Development. This is a speech made by the Deputy Director of Department of Education. So how should we understand its complete meaning? There are 4 layers. And I will briefly touch upon the titles. First, this expression can expand and sublimate the basic idea of ESD. Second, it can enrich and supplement the practical content of ESD. Third, it can expand and extend the vision and the space for innovation for ESD. And the fourth, eco-civilization and the ESD can complete existing common senses worldwide. These are some theoretical understandings of ESD. And now let's examine the practices over the years in China. In recent years, eco-civilization and ESD is showing increasingly more diversity. And it is entirely different from the situation 5, 10, or 20 years ago. There are many new and emerging teams for eco-civilization and ESD. So how do we study, expand, grow, and innovate? I have listed a few cases for your reference. First, the area of preschool education. In a normal Beijing community, preschool educators and art educators join forces to establish a sustainable design kids lab. The framework involves the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These abstract and serious goals are transformed into arts and activities. Preschool children can participate in the activities, and they can have a preliminary understanding of sustainable development concepts. This is a very precious experiment. And second, there is a case in primary school, Changshengyuan Primary School in Beijing. How do math teachers do sustainable development education? They try to solve the problem of food waste on campus. They ask students to observe mathematical problems and collect data. First, they establish the 4 principles under the guidance of experts. And this is how they did it. They established several targets in terms of cognition, social, emotional learning, and behavioral learning. Under each of the targets, they first lead the children to discover the problems. They would identify problems that are worth observing and addressing, for example, food waste, and then the process formally starts. After identifying the problems, teachers and the students would create tables and graphs together, and this is based on the mathematical knowledge they learn in class about statistics and about diagram. With the support of teachers, we could see that students have already created some graphs based on what they have discovered about food waste in school. On this basis, they start the process of research. For example, what are the dishes that are usually left? And they have created a bar chart for this. Now that food waste is so severe, what are the actions that we should take? They have created a pie chart for this survey. And how should we change the behavior of food waste? And this is a column chart that they have created. So this is experience from primary school. And they managed to change the serious as the concepts and combine it with knowledge they learn in school. And the third case is in Guangzhou Xiehe Secondary School. And they have more considerations from the theoretical perspective. They have established 10 eco-philosophies as the guiding principle in eco-civilization education in school. On the basis of theoretical understandings, they have added some selective courses in school. They have selected eco-civilization as the theme, and many courses are community-based. And they have come up with a comprehensive system. Another case is Shanghai Caoyang Secondary School. They study the natural environment of wetland, and they attempt to establish a foundation for eco-campus.
这是他们做的一个校内校外相结合的课程。
This is the chart they have created. It connects on-campus lab to social practice foundation out of the campus. And also, the knowledge taught in high schools are connected. In the fourth case, we will talk about how to facilitate education for sustainable development in big cities. And the example is in Shanghai. First, a roadmap for ESD is set. It is a very clear roadmap. What should we do for teachers, students, and the basic schools? What are the arrangements in school, and what are the dimensions outside of school? In recent years, combined with eco-targets in China, they proposed that they should build a headquarters of Teenager Carbon Neutrality Academy. It can help teenagers understand more about carbon neutrality. And they can also cooperate with some governmental departments to conduct research and practices. The fifth aspect is international organizations. Except for the government and the higher institutes, more and more NGOs are showing stronger social responsibility and participating in ESD. In this case, the organization is called the Green Light Year, and the director is Ms. Ni Huan. He graduated from Cambridge University, and he has adopted a grassroots path for eco-civilization and ESD. He has organized symposiums in many aspects of ESD. This is a solar power generation facility in her own home, and it has a positive impact in her community. She also received attention from international organizations, and she was invited to attend international activities. And the sixth case is Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University. A while ago, they established the UN ESD Center in Suzhou. That is pioneering and groundbreaking. This is the structure of RCE Suzhou. Another example is Central China Normal University. They have built the research island for China eco-civilization education. They have made many theoretical and policy explorations. And these are their reports. The eighth example is China Social Science Academy. They lead the trend of carbon study training. They have also published some books which have a positive impact on the education of ESD. The provinces of Yunnan and Hunan are new powers added to ESD in China, and they have hosted some activities. This is Hunan. 北京教科院作为在中国比较早的 Beijing Education Science Institute is among the earliest institutes to start ESD. They connect Chinese research with overseas research, and they promote the communication between different institutes. They have been studying theoretical and practical policies for over 20 years, and they have achieved many results. And they have also established a workshop for ESD. We have also developed a concept map. More specifically, we have included the logical starting point, literature, social function, target, basic qualities, courses in school, courses out of school, teachers' quality, and community advancement. There are 18 summaries in total, and it can be used by schools directly as a reference. 好了，各位，应该说20年前由北京教科院等少数 20 years ago, ESD was only led by a few institutes, but now there are more than 100 teams
这个联合国系列重要文献的感召和中国政府若干的重大战略部署的动员，自然是聚合。
The motivation from the UN and the Chinese government is the source. And dealing with climate change and sustainable development is an urgent need, and more educators are motivated to devote themselves into ESD. Eco-civilization and ESD is an inevitable path for high-quality education. Many young people are actively engaged in this area, and they are making contributions. This has become a new academic topic and a trendy social trend. And I'd like to call on all friends as participators and educators of eco-civilization and ESD. Your future starts from now. Faced with our beautiful outlooks for human peace and welfare, we should start from today, from our school, from our students, and from our own work. Today's learner will be tomorrow's leader and innovator. The name of every one of you will be included in the milestone of 21st century eco-civilization and ESD. Thank you, Professor Shi. And I'd like to thank all guest speakers for their interesting presentation. I believe that you have all learned a lot. Now we are going to start an exciting session. We have collected photography works from the audience. Eventually, we selected 23 pieces, and they are on exhibition on campus in Harvard University. We have invited 10 providers, and they will share their works in this video.
大家好，我是必须合理的郑。那必须合理在这些年呢，在营地教育和那个研学方面呢，我们已经组织了数百场的活动。然后在学校服务的方面呢，我们通过 SDG 的跨学科的项目呢，我们帮助学校去提升它的课程体系，以及提升老师的教学能力。关于提出的问题方面，希望这个社会机构能够有机的和联合国官方能够结合，这样能够系统化的，然后规模化的去推动可持续发展的教育。
大家好，我叫 Raymond， 我来自上海杨浦双语学校。
我是 Gardenia， 是哈佛大学教育学院17届的毕业生。
在教学过程中，我们试图搭建一个螺旋式上升的课程框架，引导不同年龄段的学生从戏剧表演到搜集资料，到文本话语分析，再到商业案例研究，通过不同的形式来探索和深入学习可持续发展这个话题。
那我们希望关注的呢是学生对于环境现状与实际环境问题的认识，也希望他们能够提前迈出改变自己、改变身边、改变更大世界的第一步。
大家好，我是吴威，毕业于哈佛大学设计学院。
大家好，我是许志飞，毕业于 MIT 的建筑学院。
Widely wearables 非常奇怪的可穿戴设备，运用了生活中常见的材料来制作有趣的可持续的设计。我们的课程成果是包括了学生用塑料碎屑合成的有钱币纹理的钱包，或者是用废弃垃圾袋粘合的手提袋，以及各种实验性的环保材料。
我们在可持续发展教育方面关注的问题是从设计师角度出发，如何运用环保材料做出有趣的设计。
大家好，我是来自 Peer 一恒之友的宋泽宇。我们做的可持续教育实践是将联合国可持续发展目标带入县镇高中，来支持县镇高中的同学们对可持续发展目标有学习，对可持续理念有了解，并针对他们感兴趣的议题开展回应生活中真实问题的行动。我们关注的可持续教育问题是如何让教育资源并不发达的县镇地区的学生能够同样的接触到可持续发展，并且进行回应可持续发展目标的真实行动。
大家好，我是湘妹子文艺，来自湖南师范大学教育科学学院的一名大二本科生，也是 No Carbon 项目运营部的一名成员。在万科基金会和核一律学员的支持下呢，我组建了生生不息湖南师大环保小分队。我们为我们的孩子们量身定做了一套线上线下相结合、理论与实践相结合的青年低碳活动日。我们关注的问题是，我们要如何发挥专业所长，去使孩子们将低碳理念内化于心、外化于行呢？
大家好，我是来自四川省成都的沈一之。
我是一名初中2年级的学生，我和曲新奇、赵阿义和王金熙几位同学组建了自然探秘者小组，进行了城市鸟类多样性调查的学习和研究，以此了解鸟类与城市生态环境的关系，掌握鸟类多样性的调查方法，为鸟类和城市生物多样性保护提出建议。我对于可持续发展教育方面的问题是：青少年怎样才能更有效参与可持续教育活动？
大家好，我是于思琪，我来自国内海洋保育公益机构无尽深蓝，也是深蓝学院的联合创始人。我们正在通过推广生态赶海教育工具包的方式，来普及一种更可持续的、以潮间带生物观察为主的生态赶海方式，来应对过度的娱乐性赶海给滨海。
Chinese education, innovation, and cross-national education experience. Keynote.
我是爱学教育创始人张倩。爱学教育是一家立志借用科技力量创造社会价值的教育机构。你好，自然国际线上艺术展为 K12学生提供原创主题跨学科课外活动，通过网页策展的形式，让公众了解可持续发展的概念，发挥青少年的社会影响力，达到教育创新和社会发展相结合的目的。关于可持续发展教育，我的问题是：如何通过课外活动促进可持续发展教育，帮助学生个人发展？
大家好，我是来自绿色光年的谢楠楠。绿光自2016年成立至今，我们开展了将近有800多场工作坊，其中最为特色的是社区环境自治项目——花田守护人计划。该计划是让社区群众成为社区环境自治的主人，通过用堆肥的方式在社区公共空间种菜施肥，将花田打造为垃圾分类的宣传实践点。在可持续发展教育方面，我们主要关注的问题是如何围绕17个 SDGs 设计出有趣、有意义的项目化学习的课程。
大家好，我们是来自上海市娄山中学的张艺轩、梅一鸣、魏润泽。去年夏天，我们小区的木林巷正经历一场改造。我们在采访调研中发现，住在工棚中的叔叔们没有空调，非常热。于是，我们用废弃的塑料瓶制作了一面绿色降温墙。
这个装置的原理是，当风在一定输出强度下，比如大的电风扇从矿泉水瓶子的大口输入，风从瓶子的小口输出，空气被压缩，小口附近的气温就会降低。我们将在这个论坛中和大家探讨如何调动社区居民共同参与到可持续发展的改造中。
好的，看了这么多丰富的教育案例和摄影作品，相信在场的嘉宾和观众。
After looking at these cases, I believe that you're all moved and inspired. Now let's move on to the last session, roundtable discussion. Dr. Guan Liao will organize the roundtable discussion, and they will talk about ESD. Thank you all. It gives me great pleasure to come here and discuss with you. I have listened to your presentations and I have seen the cases, and I am very happy to have opportunities to participate in some of the cases, including New Carbon and ESD practices in Shanghai. And Walter also mentioned from putting people at the center to putting Earth at the center. It is also the transition that we mentioned about eco-civilization.
就是刚刚在案例中也提到了类似的问题，就是我们在
The first question I have has been touched upon by some guest speakers. In traditional education, usually we would think about what I can do for me or what I can do for a small group of people. But climate education focus on a much broader group. And this education for other people might pose some challenges for us. So have you met with any practical difficulties? And are there any specific reasons for you to start thinking about ESD, and what do you think are the difficulties in this transition? Can we first invite Professor Grosser to talk about her views?
Yes. I think one of the hard things is when children are so young, it's very hard to think over the long term the way that they need to think about climate change. And also the generation, there's been a breach between generations. So the generation that has gone before them, in many ways, has let them down. However, when I see the examples that Dr. Gendong Shi, my apologies if I didn't say correctly, when I see those many examples and I see the videos, I have great respect and optimism in my heart because these young people are thinking about the future. They are thinking about other people. They are thinking about recycling, even thinking about food waste. That is a very, very big, important issue for climate because we waste so much food on the planet and there are so many of us on the planet. So I think the thinking challenges that I mentioned in my talk are hard. And if we don't have time to reflect deeply and to have educational opportunities, we may not look beyond them. But I see many examples here that you have offered showing young people thinking better than the generation before them. So that gives me optimism.
好的，谢谢高罗特教授。那么下一个
Thank you, Professor Grosser. Now let's give the floor to Professor Chu. Thank you, Guan Liao. I will briefly talk about a few points. There are two realities or difficulties that we need to face. First, the awareness, will, and action of sustainable development need to be promoted quickly. For climate change or other items in SDGs, many people realize that it is important, but they cannot choose their way of life accordingly. For example, talking about food waste, everyone knows that it is wrong and food security is important. But how do we put it into practice? We are aware of its importance, but from our mind to action, there are still gaps. Many young people know that I should do this, and I try to do it as much as possible. But how do we turn it into a broader action that has stronger social impact? Or how can we change it into a group behavior? This process still needs guidance. People need to realize that sustainable development is important and they need to make up their mind to do so, and then they should promote it to a larger group. Now we might have awareness, but we are not acting enough. And secondly, UN SDG is a combination of social, economic, and natural development. When we talk about sustainable development, we mostly talk about nature. And many cases presented today are also about nature. But in terms of means of life and production, they are all connected to the nature. We should pay equal attention to all these three aspects, and I hope that more young people can focus on gender equality, consumption model, and other items in urban settings. Recently, we are participating in a disaster relief plan, and we are creating a trunk marathon for youth disaster relief plan. We have included the dimensions of society, nature, and economy. We hope that young people can think about these three dimensions and innovate in this program. For example, how to live a sustainable life. So that's my answer. Thank you. Now let's give the floor to Professor Shi. Due to time constraints, maybe every guest speaker only have 19 seconds. Thank you. If we review ESD worldwide, there are 3 steps. First, the awareness of scholars and the exploration of scholars. And this was a period only a small number of people are aware of environmental and sustainable development issues. And when there are more people joining them, politicians started to act. In the UN, they have joined forces, and all the state leaders responded. And some governments were more advanced. So in some countries, sustainable development is faster. And in the third phase, the world has reached the common sense. And that is when everyone starts to take action. We are now at the third stage of everyone taking action. But there is still some imbalance in different countries and different regions. People's awareness is imbalanced. Despite the efforts of scholars and UN officials, some governmental leaders and members of the public don't have enough awareness. And there are different issues in different levels of the government. So now we need more successful cases to motivate more people to take action. And I believe we are developing towards a positive direction, but there are still many things that we need to do. I believe that this discussion in Harvard Education Symposium is very meaningful. It can motivate more people to take action, and I hope that we can see more activities of this kind and promote the sustainable development agenda worldwide. Thank you. Just as Professor Shi says, now we are at the third phase, and I believe that China is at the transition from phase 2 to phase 3. So the next question is, we always talk about Chinese characteristics. Are there any unique challenges and advantages for sustainable development education in China? First, give the floor to Professor Xu. Personally, I believe that China is the largest developing country. And in the past 4 decades, we have made many practices for China's own development problems, and we have achieved many results. The problems include ecology, society, and economy. And it is quite closely related to the 17 SDGs of the UN. During the 4 decades, there are some advantages because we have sufficient practical experience and we have broad scenarios for practice, which can provide high quality cases for education for sustainable development. And we can also conclude theories from the cases. We can find enough space for practice so that learners of sustainable development can learn not only in classrooms, but in real scenarios. That is very important, and it is also our advantage. Thank you. I'd like to add a few points. I believe that China has 2 advantages. First, we have a centralized management system. So when the central government makes an important decision, different levels of government will follow and everyone will start to take actions. And we have many successful cases following this method. In terms of UN 2030 SDG, China started to participate at an early stage, and we proposed that we will build a beautiful China. It echoes to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. So China starts to combine the construction of a beautiful China with the 2030 Development Agenda.
这一点呢，是非常我们感到自慰的。这个另外一个优势呢，就是我们是最大的。
And this is a huge relief for us. And secondly, we are the largest developing country. If we can do well, every major decision can impact other developing countries. In this way, other countries, particularly medium and small countries, can also join us in our efforts. So what are the problems of China? Governments of different levels are not very clear about the UN policies and the governmental policies. So in China, there are still many problems and obstacles in our ESD development. We still need more young people to participate in this process and raise the awareness of the society so that the government officials of different levels can have stronger awareness and start to take action. Thank you. So now that we have talked about China, at the global level, how can we facilitate sustainable development through global communication and cooperation? I'd like to ask Professor Grotzer, please.
Well, first I'd like to say something about centralized versus decentralized. I was working with a group of young people, and I showed them how when a flood comes, fire ants make a raft to save their species, their community, and they float to a new place. And some of the ants on the bottom will die, but the species, the community of ants will survive. And one of the students, a fourth grade boy, said, I don't think human beings will do that. I think they will think too long. And this is why centralized is in many ways can be more effective. And when we think globally, we have to deal with the fact that we are decentralized. So I do think it is the understanding, the collectivity of human beings. If we can help the next generation truly understand that we must work together and to stop thinking as enemies, but think as collective, then we will be successful. I also think that some of it becomes part of how we change our economies and what kinds of solutions we find. There's a lovely example in Bangladesh where they have distributed solar electricity on all of the homes in this one area. And it has given the people in those homes control over their own electricity, but they also sell it out to the grid. And when they sell it to the grid, they have resources, but they also have resilience. So there is a case where a decentralized model is very powerful and works very well for the people in the community. So I think we can have innovation that's different in different places, but overall we need to be earthlings and see ourselves as earthlings. If there was someone coming, an invader from outside of Earth, we would all very quickly start thinking like earthlings, wouldn't we? We need to realize that we're at that point. It's not a choice.
Thank you for your answers. And I have a last question. There are different institutes and organizations among the audience, and they are all keen to participate in ESD. So could you give them encouragement or suggestion in one sentence so that they can get future results in dealing with sustainable development and climate change? Can I first give the floor to Professor Guocer, and then Professor Xu, and then Professor Shi?
In one sentence, we work with schools all over and develop resources that we are happy to share, and we are happy to have people reach out to us and ask to work with us and to ask, to use materials that we've developed and to share the things that they have done. One sentence.
我也希望，如果说一句话的话，就是我再重申一下，就是我们
In one sentence, I'd like to re-stress that for everyone who are willing to dedicate into sustainable development education, don't hesitate. Simply start taking actions and do not be intimidated by difficulties. I believe that 2030 SDG still has 7 years, and China still have 12 years to realize a beautiful China. So in the decade to come, for equal civilization education and ESD, for China and the world, this is an important period. The young teams and young people are faced with a perfect opportunity for development, and I believe that you can give full play to your potentials. Please grasp this opportunity and take actions. Thank you. Thank you for your answers, and I believe that we should indeed take actions as soon as possible. Thank you all. I will give the floor to the host.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to communicate with the guest speakers today.
好的，非常感谢4位嘉宾的精彩分享和对谈。
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I'd like to thank all the educators, organizers who participated in our activities. This session is coming to an end. We have talked about the concept of ESD, and we have shared some practical experience and cases for your reference. I believe that we can provide some positive inspirations for ESD worldwide. We'd also like to thank the efforts from all the volunteers and staff members for providing support for this program.
非常感谢可持续发展教育独家专题活动的主创和嘉宾们，带领我们深入。
I'd like to thank all the guest speakers and the co-directors for their insights in ESD. Please take a rest. We will reconvene at 9:40, and we will listen to Mr. Wang Yi. Welcome back. We are very honored to invite Executive Director, Harvard Center China, Mr. Wang Dong, and he will give a keynote speech for the closing ceremony. He used to be managing director at Goldman Sachs and a partner at McKinsey. Outside of his full-time work, he has devoted himself to education-related charity work. He is co-founder and vice chair of the board of United World College, Changshu, China, and a member of the UWC China National Committee. He will talk to us about international education in age of ChatGPT. Thank you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity for making this presentation. My topic is international education in China in the time of ChatGPT. After the birth of ChatGPT, there are many dialogues about education and employment. As you can see, even GPT 3.5 version can complete many tasks unimaginable before, including standardized tests. And we have to re-recognize the potential of artificial intelligence. This year, 4.0 version of GPT was released, and we are more impressed by its abilities. This is an example from OpenAI when it released GPT 4.0. It is a physics question. It's a bit complicated, and ChatGPT easily Meanwhile, GPT has also impacted employment. This is a report from Goldman Sachs. According to their estimation, 300 million people worldwide might lose their job because of artificial intelligence. And surprisingly, it is not the low value works that require manual labor that is replaced first. White collar workers are the group that are under the most severe impact. Nearly half of the administrative works will be replaced. And 40% of lawyers, architects, and engineers will be replaced. We all know that now GPT can write its own code and it's quite good at this. So GPT not only impacts education, it might have a more direct impact on employment. Today we talk about the issue of education, but for young people, I believe that the most important thing is employment, and education plays an important role in this process. However, the situation we face today is that looking for employment opportunities might be more challenging than looking for education opportunities. So how should we reconsider the relationship between education, employment, and personal development? I believe this is an important topic. First, I'd like to present you with a set of figures. This is the question in US population censorship. The question is, is the work you do directly related to your major during undergraduate education? Only 27% say yes. In other words, nearly 3/4 of the people do not do jobs directly related to their major. When applying for university education, many parents and students struggle choosing a proper major, which can provide the best foundation for their future employment. But actually, this might not be the case because study and work and our long-term development doesn't follow a linear relationship. Doing what you learn might not be the best way. We need to think of the abilities that are the most important in workplaces. This is a survey from the World Economic Forum, and the survey is conducted every 5 years. These two results are from 2015 to 2020. Executives of Fortune Global 500 are asked in the survey, In the internet age, the most important ability is the ability to solve complicated problems. This ability ranks the first in a survey in 2015 and 2020, and this is easily understandable because in workplaces, most of the questions do not have a standard answer. We need to have a comprehensive understanding of the complicated problem, think independently, and provide a good solution. The second skill in 2020 is critical thinking. It's interesting because a few weeks ago, something Elon Musk said became popular in Chinese internet. He was asked what is the most important working ability, and he answers critical thinking. Now, we need to make judgments even if we simply watch news. So critical thinking has become increasingly important. The third ability is creativity. We talk about innovation all the time, and we hope that what we do and the solutions we provide are creative. These three abilities to deal with complicated problems, critical thinking, and creativity, are not taught as a priority in most schools. In schools, we acquire knowledge, but knowledge can be easily found on the internet, previously on Wikipedia and today in ChatGPT. Indeed, we need to think about what we can teach our children in schools and universities, and how can we make sure that they can succeed in the long term. People always ask me what is the best undergraduate education, and I believe I can explain the literary education in the US with a T structure. In literary education, students have wide exposure to different problems, and they can select one area of interest to dive deeper. And this is referred to as field of concentration in Harvard. In this field, the students can build their specific abilities, and I believe this T structure is very scientific because they can prioritize things that they're interested in and also develop generic skills. And this is how general education in Harvard is arranged. There are 4 types of general education, 3 disciplinary education, and 1 analysis course. These are all important for broadening students' horizons. And this is exactly what has given me the ability and motivation to engage in education. I studied astrophysics, consulting, and eventually end up in the area of education. I can do things that I like in these fields because I have received high quality high school education and undergrad education in Harvard. Powerful education can benefit students for their whole life. They can do what they want to do in fields of their own interests. For Chinese students who want to study overseas, they might need more complicated preparation. Only preparation for applying foreign schools is not enough. Of course, this is necessary, but the second part is even more important. They have to prepare for adaptation. We hope that when students go to schools in other countries, they can spend their time happily and they can learn new things. However, the environment in foreign schools is very different from Chinese schools in terms of learning abilities, methods, and social interactions. It raises higher requests for our students. If you can adapt to an international environment, students can spend their undergraduate period in a more meaningful way, and this might be even more important than the preparation for application. And the third aspect is even more important. It is related to employment. Around 80% of overseas students come back to China. This is perfectly fine because for Chinese students, the best opportunities are still in China. But when they come back to China, they face competitors from high quality universities in China, and the overseas students must be equipped with the ability to do things well in China. And they have to learn this before leaving China, and they cannot learn how to do things in China abroad. So for high school students who are preparing for overseas education, it is not as simple as choosing courses or schools. They have to prepare for adaptation and prepare for coming back. As for the future of international education in China, there are both positive and negative sides. There are many policy changes in China. For example, for training facilities and for private education institutes, there have been many changes. And after this round of reform from this autumn, there might be less high schools conducting international education, and the competition applying for high quality high school will be more severe. And the relationship between China and the US continued to deteriorate. And the domestic economic situation has also impacted the choices for overseas study. We could see a significant decrease in the number of undergraduate and postgraduate overseas students. I believe that the number might rise slightly after the pandemic, but the overall trend is still downward. Lastly, GPT has a direct impact on employment. In the future, there will be more fierce competition in employment, including employment for overseas students who come back. Parents and students need to reconsider planning their education path, including what they want to learn and whether they want to learn in China or abroad. I believe that facilitating international education in China has many difficulties and challenges, but it is necessary and it is feasible. I'd like to give you an example of UWC in Changshu. This is the group photo of the school in Changshu UWC before the pandemic. We asked all students to participate and wear their own national clothes. There are around 600 students and a few teachers representing 101 countries and regions. It is very diverse. Chinese students are from different provinces and cities. A diverse group is an important element of diverse education. When it comes to international education, we talk about an international environment and spirit instead of international courses alone. In UWC, we attach the most importance to these 9 values. For example, accepting differences, responsibility, respect, empathy, environment, idealism, self-challenging, taking actions, and cross-cultural understanding. These are the spirits of international education, and I hope that this diverse group, these extraordinary young people, can devote themselves into the mission. And I hope that during high school, they can develop different abilities and a global vision. With these abilities, I believe in university or in workplaces and beyond, they have the ability to do things that they want to do and they can do it well. I hope that international education in China can provide more choices for their students. And I hope that these students have the same privilege that I had when I received my education. And I hope that all students can find their own direction for development and realize their dream. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. Wang. There are many questions in the comments, and I might choose 1 or 2 questions to ask you. The first question, students can improve their soft skills, and this cannot be replaced by ChatGPT, but there is still a shortage of jobs. How can the field of education deal with this problem? For high school and universities, there are 2 important things to do. First, find direction for personal development, both through exposure and reflection. And the second, acquire abilities to solve problems and do things. Eventually, students should be clear about what they want to do. Maybe not on the first day, maybe for the first job, because I myself started education when I'm 40 years old. I believe that universities should guide students to think about their directions in life and abilities to solve problems. And I believe with these abilities, students will find the jobs that they like and they can achieve further personal development. Thank you. We have one last question. If we want to popularize the application of ChatGPT in international education, are there any ethnic problems that we should consider? There has already been a policy that allow students to refer to ChatGPT as the source of their coursework. And I believe this is the correct move. There is no point in forbidding students to use ChatGPT. And students cannot outsource their coursework to ChatGPT. But I can improve what I have already written with ChatGPT. We need to accept GPT as one of the important tools for future education. And this trend has already started today, and I believe that in the future, there will be more tools for us to use. Thank you so much for your speech. Now that the last keynote speech has ended, the 2023 Harvard China Education Forum has come to an end. Let's invite members from the committee to give us an ending note. Hello, everyone. I am Angela Wang, the co-chair external. We started the preparation from the 1st of November, and finally, we are able to present this symposium to you. I'd like to thank all the partners' support and thank the audience and all the assistants, directors, and the volunteers. Thank you for your efforts. This year, we have invited 59 guest speakers, including scholars, researchers, educators, and education practitioners. We are lucky enough to contact so many guest speakers, and I can feel your passion towards education. Every guest speaker is very busy. Still, they manage to give us some time choosing their topics and producing their slides. The improvements of the director's assistants, interpreter, and the volunteers have provided me with a lot of inspiration and encouragement. I'd like to thank all the members of the executive committee the most. Thank you for your company. Our initial intention is to build a platform for educators to communicate, and I'd like to thank all of you for bringing me the vitality of education. I'm grateful that I can start this journey with so many extraordinary educators, and it's my honor to inherit CES. We have been trying to find a meaningful path of education. I hope that we can embark on a new journey and look towards the sky. The symposium today is approaching the end. I hope that we can meet again next year and we can have better communication at the time. Thank you. I am the internal co-chair. Hello, everyone. I am the internal co-chair of the 14th Harvard China Education Forum, ALVA. First, I'd like to say thank you to all the audience who support our symposium. I hope that you have new inspirations and ideas, and I hope that you can actively and freely explore multiple possibilities of education. I participated in the preparation of the symposium in 2017 first. My identity has changed, but my love and my passion towards education remains constant. During the past 6 months, I'd like to first thank the members of the executive committee. We brainstorm the themes in deep nights and we prepare for the plan and actively accomplish our own tasks. We encourage each other, understand each other, and help each other. It is also my honor to know the 16 co-directors, 30 assistants, more than 100 volunteers, and the simultaneous interpreter, Zhu Ning. Thank you for meeting and choosing Harvard China Education Symposium and create this wonderful event together with us. Thank you for your efforts, and I hope that you have realized personal growth in the symposium. We have a perfect gathering. We have provided a brilliant symposium for more than 5,000 audience. And it is my honor to be your friend and co-chair. This is only a short experience for everyone, and we will always carry on in the future. We will experience more real stories and know more about ourselves. I hope that the ending of this symposium can start a new journey for all CS friends and the audience. I hope that you can explore, innovate, and see a broader world with our heart. Now let's give the floor to the secretary, Xiaoyun. Hello, everyone. I am the secretary of this Harvard China Education Forum, Song Xiaoyun. In the past 3 days, we communicated face-to-face with guest speakers and audience and listened to frontline education practitioners and scholars online with all the audience. We talk about the power of technology and art in innovative education. We explore the innovative education model of STEAM education. We experience ICH education. We facilitate social inclusion for children with special need. We focus on the theories and practices of children's literature education, and we analyze the localization of mental health education. The Education for Sustainable Special Project lead us to think how education can empower sustainable development, and the sharings reveal multiple possibilities of education as a career. Behind all the interesting activities, I can see the passion from co-directors to education and how dedicated they are to the topic of education. I can feel the power of education, which will continue to motivate me along this path. I'd like to thank all the co-directors and the staff members. You have made this symposium possible. This is the 14th year of Harvard China Education Symposium, and I am honored to become a member of this big family. I hope that you can make your own contributions to education in China. We will see you again tomorrow at Harvard China Education Forum. Now I'll give the floor to the Operation Director, Chen Yi Becky. Hello, everyone. I am Chen Yi, the Operation Director of this Harvard China Education Symposium. And I'd like to thank all the volunteers. As the operation team, we interact with the audience a lot, and I'd like to thank all the audience for your support and participation.
OK，我们现在钱佳莹，我们的公关总监方便开麦讲一下你的感想吗？我们的陈怡。
Now can we give the floor to Chen Jiaying? Chen Yi will be back soon. Chen Jiaying Nicole is the PR director. Apologies for the technical issues. Hello, everyone. I am the PR director, Nicole. It's my honor to bring this symposium to the audience with the support of more than 40 PR members across different areas and reach more educators and education practitioners. We have received the support from nearly 100 media around the world and 50 higher institute organizations. On behalf of all PR members, I'd like to thank all of you. Special thanks go to our exclusive on-site media cooperator, BARTV, and LA Post for their promotion. I'd also like to thank the support of the live streaming platform Bilibili and WeChat account. I'd like to thank Guangyi Education, Sohu Education, China Education Online, and the China Youth Network for their report. Together, we will go towards the future because of you. We will create a new chapter for education. We will learn from the past and together go into the future. We hope that we can stick to our mandate and empower education, safeguard the infinite future of education. Now let's give the floor to the Operation Director. Hello, everyone. I am Chen Yi, the Operation Director of this symposium. At the end of this symposium, on behalf of the operation team, I'd like to say thank you to all the audience volunteers and team members. As the operation team, we interact with the audience the most. Here, I'd like to thank all the audience for your support and participation so that we have the opportunity to study and communicate with you. Your questions and feedbacks have provided us with valuable opportunities and encouragement for our work. I'd like to thank more than 140 volunteers and assistants. Their contribution made this symposium possible. These efforts and dedication is also the driving force for our future development. Thank you for your support and trust. I believe that benevolence should be the core of education, and education should be full of care and humanities. I hope that we can use love as the foothold and communicate the pleasure of education. Thanks again for your support for Harvard China Education Symposium. In the future, we will continue to improve ourselves and make our contributions to Chinese education. Now let's give the floor to Wang Yichen, the Director for Communication. On behalf of the whole team, I'd like to sincerely thank all the audience, guest speakers, volunteers, and co-directors. It is my honor to be part of this team and talk about diverse exploration of education. With the support of the co-directors, we have produced nearly 100 WeChat posts, and we have involved 7 platforms and more than 100 cooperating platforms. For the first time, we have also reached new social media platforms such as Instagram, Little Red Book, and TikTok. After the symposium ends, we will also provide media reports and summaries on WeChat. And I'd like to thank my team. Without you, none of this will be realized. In the end, I'd like to quote a Chinese ancient motto: I can always find the teacher among great people. I really appreciate the platform of Harvard China Education Symposium because it has brought me to so many outstanding education practitioners and educators. I sincerely hope that Harvard China Education Symposium could be better and better and connect more educators. I hope that we can see, express, act, and then impact more people. Now let's give the floor to the design director, Xiong Xueyuan. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am the design director, Xiong Xueyuan Madison, of this Harvard China Education Symposium. I'd like to thank the audience and the peers for your support. It is my honor to participate in visual design. In visual design and planning for this symposium, we stress innovation and interaction. For the first time, we have adopted the design of a symbol exclusive for this symposium. We have coordinated and completed the visual support for different symposiums and panels. We have completed the visual presentation online and offline. On behalf of the design team, I'd like to thank all the friends who have participated in the preparation of this symposium. And once again, I'd like to thank all the guest speakers and audience for discussing education outcome with us. And I hope that you can continue to explore in the path of education diversity. Thank you. Now let's give the floor to the Finance Director, Su Ruoyi. Hi, everyone. I am the Finance Director, Su Ruoyi Sylvia. I'd like to thank all the audience, guest speakers, and volunteers who participated in this symposium. It is my honor to participate in this symposium, and I truly appreciate this opportunity. I'd like to thank the official partners of this education symposium. They have provided a guarantee and support for us. On behalf of all members of the executive committee, I'd like to thank them for their support for China's education course and thank them for establishing partnership with us. As the finance director, I get to understand that we should use our resources with plan so that we can benefit more people. Now let's give the floor to the tech director, Russell and Bruce. Hi, everyone. I am the tech director, Russell. I am the tech director, Bruce. In this symposium, we talk about different areas of education, from individual differences to emerging technologies, from the perspective of students to parents, from theories to practices. Education is for the development of people. This is a profound saying. In this era of information, we should focus not only on students' grades and academic performance, but also pay attention to their comprehensive quality and future development. We all have the responsibility to make contributions for education. Through technological methods, we can break the boundary of time and space so that children can receive high quality education resources at different locations and different times. And we can also individualize ways to provide education for different students. This education symposium is possible because of the support of different staff members and volunteers. Here, I'd like to thank all the members from the executive committee, all the assistants, co-directors, and volunteers. Also, I'd like to thank all the guest speakers and the audience and the technical support of Bilibili and WeChat. This activity is made possible by the efforts of every member. I hope that we can provide you with new insights and understanding of education, and together we will make our contributions to education. Now let's give the floor back to Elba. Thank you, Russell and Bruce, the two handsome tech directors. Now we are approaching the end of the 14th Harvard China Education Symposium. We have heated discussions about education, and I believe that the discussions and thinkings will continue in the future. I'd like to thank all the members of the symposium, all the audience, and all the guest speakers who provide us with insights and knowledge. Special thanks to our premier strategic partner, Wukong Education, platinum partners, Shang Nancy Friends SNF International Education Group, Avenues, the World School Shenzhen, and Beijing International Bilingual Academy for supporting the 14th Harvard China Education Symposium. I hope that we can continue to explore possibilities of education, and please continue to follow us in 2024 for the 50th.
Bye.